Hey Reefers, welcome back to Grand Canyon Reefs, and today we're taking a look at the corals in my 100-gallon mixed reef and some of the coral warfare that I've been experiencing, so stay tuned. And don't forget, I'm doing another giveaway of Little Shop of Horror Zoas, shipping included, to anywhere in the United States, completely free. And all you have to do to enter is subscribe to the channel. Yep, it's that simple. The first winner actually just received his frag a few weeks ago, and it's looking great. So, the first corals that we'll take a look at are two LPS corals exhibiting some warfare, the Space Invader Pectinia and candy cane or Calabastrea. So in this example of warfare, it is actually only one coral that's doing the stinging, and that is Space Invader Pectinia, and then it's the candy cane coral which is being stung, and you can see here certain heads are kind of receding and dying back. And the Space Invader Pectinia is known for having one of the strongest stings out of all the corals that there is, but with that sting and danger to other corals does come the beauty. Personally, it's one of my favorite corals, from just the coloring to the fluorescence that it has, so it's hard to not want a piece of this in your tank. And if you kind of take a real close look at the Space Invader Pectinia, you'll see some really faint string-like looking things swinging around, and those are going to be the sweeper tentacles that the coral will essentially send out from its body to detect and sting other nearby corals like it's doing right now to this candy cane. And so in these next couple coming days, I'm going to have to move this candy cane a couple inches farther over so that the sweeper tentacles hopefully won't be able to reach it then. And one good way to mitigate these sweeper tentacles, if you're still looking to have this beautiful coral in your mixed reef like I am as well, is to try and put it in a location where the tentacles can get blown upstream away from corals, if that makes sense. So the way my flow kind of works out is that it'll push off the front of the glass and then kick back exactly over the pectinia towards the back. And so that's why the tentacles often get pulled with the flow when it's in heavy current towards the back, which is why it's hitting the candy cane. So just being aware of that and keeping space, away from where those tentacles will flow is a great way to kind of mitigate the strong stinging that this coral has. The next example of coral warfare is between two SPS, specifically Montipora, the beach bum Monty and the TSA death spiral Monty. In this instance, both Montiporas are actually stinging each other. However, the death spiral is winning strictly due to its insanely fast growth rates. So even though both of these corals are from the same species and they're Montiporas, it's important that you also have growth rates in mind when you're placing corals such as these. Otherwise, you'll run into situations like this to where a slower growing coral like a beach bum doesn't have enough space and it's getting over-competed with the faster growing coral such as this death spiral Monty. And moving to the other side of my tank, let's discuss a much smaller but more pesky example. Be wary of corals that reproduce by releasing unattached babies into your tank, just like Kenya trees essentially. These corals, like softies and leathers and mushrooms, can release spores or babies, which then go on to attach maybe potentially on the rockwork next to your favorite coral per se. So just kind of keep that in mind as you add those corals to your tank, that if they do reproduce, are they in an area where they could just randomly produce a spore that could go on to, per se, an SPS colony and sting it like is happening here to this bubblegum digitata. And now, back to a much more common example of coral warfare, two acros fighting for space. Here we have two Acropora, a ORA tricolor Velita and a Merlin staff Acropora, both SPS, both acros, and both growing into the same space because I didn't plant them far enough apart months ago when they were just frags. So even on this side of the Merlin staff, you can see my surf and turf is now kind of encroaching onto it. So on both sides of the Merlin staff, different acros are encroaching it and really limiting how much space it can have, which is totally normal to want to pack a tank full of frags. I did it, and it just looks better than having small little 1-inch frags spaced out 5, 6, 7 inches apart. But understand that as they grow, you'll be having to frag them almost weekly if you don't give them, enough adjacent space. So keep that in mind as you're planting SPS, as they can definitely exhibit warfare as they encroach onto each other and sting each other for space. And now I'll kind of mention just more broadly warfare in general in a mixed reef tank. I think this middle section of my tank really highlights kind of a good example of this. I have everything from bounce mushrooms to Euphyllia to SPS, all packed in really like a 6-inch to a foot area of 1 or 2 rocks or so. And I really like the outcome of it. as it created like a very, unique and diverse different coral growth and coral color and pattern. But you also see here an example where my bubblegum digitata is actively stinging a Euphyllia head as they were just kind of encroaching and getting too close. So, it's really nice to incorporate different coral types really right next to each other as you get great contrast and, the color shapes and the growth patterns like you see on those bounces there, hugging the rocks underneath the acros. But it's also important to think about, coral health long term, as all these hammer frags were just one heads when I got them, and they're now turning into mini colonies, which, there you can see again that bubblegum kind of reached out and stung that closest pink hammerhead, and hopefully it'll make it through, but no guarantees. So something to definitely keep in mind as you are making a mixed reef tank, as you do want to give corals enough space to grow and keep them as healthy as possible, because as they do approach each other, at the end of the day everything is always competing for space and life, and that can be one of the potential outcomes of a mixed reef. But it's not always doom and gloom in a mixed reef tank. There are a ton of positives, obviously, and there are plenty of corals that don't sting and can be placed together, infinitely close. And I think acans or micromusas are a really good example of that. And if my fox face ever wants to get out of frame here, I'll kind of highlight my Acan Garden that's in the making and why I love it so much. So with acans, they don't sting at all, and they have no problem encroaching up and growing literally onto and inside of almost essentially another adjacent acan. So it really allows you to create really nice color contrast and essentially a garden of multiple different types that will, as they grow out, grow into each other and have no problem. So as you can see in these top-down view, the acans have just all really grown into each other. That green one, from every single side is getting pushed on, but there's no actual negative effects. And so this is a great example of a mixed reef and a coral garden where there is no stinging and it's just pure positives. So you love to see it. And another great example of corals coexisting within a mixed reef is zoanthids. Zoanthids of virtually all different strains and types and sizes can be grown, as you can see here, right next to each other with virtually no problem. I will note that slower growing zoanthids will definitely kind of get covered up and encroached by maybe faster growing ones. So my rainbow hornets and those blue AOIs that you can see there are kind of slower growing, and they're kind of getting over encroached by the Sunny D's and these blueberry ones, which are just taking off on my floor. But that being said, if you just kind of keep that in mind and put slower growing ones with slower growing ones, there's really no downsides to having a beautiful Zoa garden like I have here in the making. And so I'll just kind of highlight a couple different clips that I have of the Zoa gardens from up front and top down, and let some music play so you guys can enjoy them for all the Zoa lovers out there. And that's going to wrap up this video on coral warfare in my mixed reef tank. Be sure to like and subscribe so you enter for your chance to win the Little Shop of Horror giveaway coming up soon. And be ready for my next video, which I'm working on now, which is going to highlight some of my tips for coral care for Gonipora. As you can see, I have a wider range of different types and color morphs of Gonis, and I've had great success with them. So I'll kind of highlight some of my general tips, feeding requirements, flow requirements, and things along those lines for how I've had success caring for Goniporas over the years. So be sure to stay tuned and enjoy some more top-down videos of my reef tank. Thanks so much, and happy reefing!